right. We've got Dawn calling in from Boston. Claire, welcome. Calling in from Maryland. Rose in Kentucky, welcome. Heidi, thanks for joining us in Port Angeles. All right. We've got Dawn calling in from Boston. Claire, welcome. Who else? We've got Heather calling in from California, another West Coaster like me. We've got Joan in St. Paul. Kathy, always happy to see you. Calling in from New York. Ken from Nashville. Trinity calling in from India. Oh, welcome to the call. Sir calling in from North Carolina. Anna in New Jersey. Lupia calling in from Maryland. Glad you can make it. And Andrea, glad you can join us. Calling in from Guatemala as well. Great to have you all here. Chad calling in from Santa Fe, New Mexico. Annette calling in again from New Jersey. All right, good variety of attendees. Now it looks like admissions is slowing, so I will go ahead and get started. We have plenty to unpack today. Again, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining. My name is Stephanie Wolf, and I am the Membership Relations Coordinator at Population Connection. It's great to see so many people tuned in for the first session of our new site visit series, where we will learn more from our Guatemalan-based partners. And today we will hear from Seeds for a Future. Now, I can't mention our global partners without acknowledging the generous donors whose contributions make these partnerships a reality. PopConnect is a membership-based organization, and all of our programs are made possible by the support of dedicated donors. If you haven't joined already and you can, I do hope you will consider joining today. On the call, I am joined by Population Connection Senior Analyst, Hannah Evans. She visited our Guatemalan-based partners this spring and will be sharing photos and stories from her trip. We're also joined by the Executive Director of Seeds for a Future, Leilani Yats. Leilani has been working with Seeds since 2022, combining her corporate skills and passion for social impact to empower communities and advance environmental stewardship. If you have any questions for our speakers, please drop those in the Q&A box found at the bottom of your screen, and we will do our very best to get those answered during the Q&A session. And for any questions we don't have time to answer live, we will provide written responses along with a recording of this presentation, the presentation slides, and access to the chat box discussion. Those are all the housekeeping items from me. So we will go ahead and get started, and I will send it over to you, Hannah.
Okay, thanks so much, Steph. Can you see my slide okay? Yes? Okay, great. All right, hi everyone. Thank you so much for being here. It's really great to be here with all of you, and so nice to see you again, Leilani. My name is Hannah, and I'm going to be leading us through the first section of this presentation. So I'm going to be giving a brief introduction into Seeds for a Future, giving some context into Guatemalan demographics and present realities as it relates to structural challenges and things like that. Then I'm going to be sharing some pictures and some testimonials from my site visit there in March, and hopefully leading into or setting a good foundation for Leilani to come in and talk in much more detail about Seeds for a Future, the work being done there, where, why, how, and all the details surrounding the really important work being done. Also really looking forward to hearing what Seeds has planned for the future as well, which will be discussed also. All right, so Seeds for a Future is one of our partner organizations we've been working with since 2002, and they work to increase access to organic foods, especially fruits and vegetables, by providing training and resources for community members to learn how to germinate their own seeds and grow their own food in their own household, community gardens, and farms. So their mission is ultimately to eliminate chronic malnutrition and disease, which is disproportionately felt among Guatemalans' rural and indigenous communities. And they do so again by providing training and resources for people to learn how to produce their own food. This is a modality that helps to increase food security, also increasing nutrition and health, also facilitating better economic health and well-being. So just a little context into Guatemala, because I always think it's really important to give that sort of overview. Guatemala, I just want to start out by saying, is a really beautiful country. It's got stunning natural beauty, really lush rainforests, and volcanic highlands. It's got over 37 different volcanoes, three of which are active, one of which is pictured here. This is a picture I took from Antigua, Guatemala. It's got such a rich biodiversity and vibrant wildlife. It's got cloud forests and ancient Maya ruins. It's just a fantastic and beautiful country. And it's also got a really vibrant culture as well, mixed with indigenous Maya populations as well as Spanish colonial influences. And you can see this reflected in really colorful textiles, really beautiful music and celebrations and festivals. But it is kind of unique in comparison to other Central American countries because it maintains a really high percentage of indigenous populations. So about 41% of Guatemalan's population is indigenous. Over 22 different languages are spoken here. And it's got a population of about 18.2 million people. So it's a really young country. Its median age is about 23 years. And it's also sort of specific to, it's sort of unique in the sense that it's got one of the most rural populations in all of Central America. So almost half of the population is rural. And it's a population that's slowly beginning to urbanize, but it still maintains a really heavy percentage of the overall population. Its total fertility rate is about 2.26, which indicates a steadily growing population and one of the highest in Latin America. But I want to make clear that this is the total fertility rate overall for the entire country. So there are vast disparities that exist depending on where you are. If you're in a rural community, a rural at-risk, low-income community, the fertility is going to be much higher. And this is also very much having to do with things like education and income, right? So in some of the rural, more indigenous communities, fertility rates can be upwards of 5 or 6 children per woman. Guatemala is also one of the most unequal countries in Central America. So this uh, dates back to histories of colonization and then the impact of the United Fruit Company economic colonization that has preceded the country's present and continues to influence the country today. But there's a really small elite of about 260 families that control the vast majority of the wealth. So they control over 56% of the nation's assets. And it's just a very unequal sort of country with really vast disparities in wealth and access to resources according to income. So, for example, 20%, the poorest 20% receive 3.8% of the total income, while the richest 20% claims 60.6% of the income. So this really speaks to a lot of the challenges being faced by Guatemala is this consolidation of wealth amongst a very few amount of people in comparison to the whole. And poverty is disproportionately impacting certain communities, right? In particular, indigenous communities, which have been historically and contemporarily marginalized. So upwards of 90% of Guatemala's indigenous population is existing and living in extreme poverty. Also, remittances sent from abroad are really important for the country's economy and for sustaining rural communities. So this is where people go to other countries like the United States or other places in Central America, work, and then send money back to their families. And this is something that helps rural communities, especially, just sustain and survive. It represents about 10% of the country's GDP, but it's just really important for rural communities, again, in terms of sustaining and helping them live day to day. Also, and I'm sure Leilani is going to touch on this further, but rural Guatemalans actually face the highest rates of chronic malnutrition in comparison to anywhere in Central America. So these are some of the major challenges being faced by these communities and the population of Guatemala overall. So, in terms of our site visit, we started out in Antigua, Guatemala, and then went to Chacala, Guatemala. And I've just presented some of the basic demographic statistics here just to kind of give some context and speak further into how these wealth disparities really manifest according to where you are in geography and location. So, Antigua, Guatemala is a really popular tourist destination, if not the most popular tourist destination in all of Guatemala. It's got a population of about 60,000 people. Mostly people are Ladino, which is a mix of Mestizo and non-Indigenous and European. Because of the heavy amount of investments that are coming from abroad in terms of tourism and also expat communities, which are growing very quickly, income is higher in comparison to many other places throughout Guatemala at about $840 per month per person. Its local economy is based on tourism, language schools, and a really thriving expat community. So the challenges being faced by a municipality like Antigua really have to do with adapting to and managing the process of gentrification, where there's rising cost of living, an influx of people, which speaks to the need to adapt infrastructure and development, and making sure that the distribution of resources is adequate and equal throughout the community. We went to Chacala, Guatemala. So we started there, went to Chacala, Guatemala, which is about 4 hours away driving. And it's a completely different situation, right? It's got a much smaller population, about 10,000 people live here, and it's mostly indigenous, right? And it's a community that experiences really extreme poverty. So most families here are surviving on about $3 per day. Its local economy is agriculture. It used to have a really big coffee plantation, but now it's largely subsistence-based and small-scale agriculture, which maintains the economy. And their challenges are just access to basic resources, access to things like clean water, access to things like education and healthcare and shelter and economic opportunity. So two very different communities, and again, kind of speaking into the wealth disparities that exist in this country, especially. So in terms of our site visit, we met at a community nursery in Chacala. So Seeds for a Future has different central nurseries in communities where employees of Seeds for a Future work and help community members learn how to grow and germinate their own seeds. So they have a nursery with a bunch of seeds and they offer training and resources for people to come and receive to learn how to grow their own food. So pictured here on the left are Susie and Armando. Armando is the program director, and Susie is one of the local contributors to the effort. And they were giving us training on what the process is for germinating the seeds and cultivating the soil and things like that. We then went to a few household checkups where we were going to different household gardens and speaking with family members and making sure everything was growing according to plan, answering any questions that people had, and just deepening relationships between seeds and community members. And, this is a really beautiful experience because in each household we went to, the residents were so happy to see Armando and the rest of the team really open their doors and super welcoming and really interested and really passionate about growing their own food, working with seeds, and just having this opportunity to become more connected to the land and to nature. So I think it really speaks to just the huge impact that Seeds is making in these communities. Everybody was extremely welcoming and nurturing. Yeah. We then went to different community nurseries, each place having a specific geographic location, a specific sort of ecological framework and reality, specific climate. And so different things were being grown in different places. And in each place, we learned a little bit more about the specific processes in each location for growing certain fruits and vegetables, starter seeds, and everything related to organic gardening. We then had closing presentations at the Chocolat headquarters. This is pictured here. Many of the workers and employees of Seeds were able to gather. We had a meal together, and we were just able to hear from many of these employees who got up and gave really heartfelt testimonials just about the work that Seeds is doing, how it's impacted them, how it's impacted their lives and their communities, how it's made them healthier, more connected to their food. Really beautiful. It was such a beautiful experience to get to see and experience all of that and to really know firsthand, the impact of this organization, and organizations like this that are working on the ground in communities, providing resources to really at-risk and marginalized places that would otherwise not have access to any of this. We also had a couple of the Maya community members came and gave presentations and talks in their native Mayan language, and then taught us a native dance together that we were able to do, which was also such a beautiful experience and really deep and meaningful for everybody involved. I was very honored to be a part of that as well. So here are just a few pictures from the site visits and the community visits we went to. Pictured here are just, yeah, the different places we went, what the community gardens look like, some of the community members that were involved in this process. As you can see, things look totally different depending on which household you're in. And yeah, pictured at the top are many of the Seeds for a Future employees and workers that were traveling with us to different site visits into different communities and households. Pictured in the bottom right there, I don't know if anybody knows what that is, but it's cardamom, which is grown really extensively throughout Guatemala, especially in these regions, but largely not harvested. I think it's used mostly for shade because it ends up being quite expensive to produce. But regardless, it's a really important crop in these regions. So here I just wanted to give a few testimonials in the conversations that I had with many of the employees of Seeds for a Future, where I was able to just gather a few reflections that they put forth. This is from Moises, who is pictured here in the gray shirt at the bottom. And he was just talking about how important Seeds for a Future's work is for the health of their community. He was talking about how in a community down the road, there are so many chemicals that are added to the food that you can really smell it and ultimately taste it. And that through this program, he was able to learn, and community members are able to learn how to tell through things like smell and taste, and also by growing their own food, what's healthy and what isn't. This seems like a very simple thing, but it's so important, especially for people who have not otherwise had access to organic fruits and vegetables, and now the opportunity to not only have access to these foods, but to be able to grow and learn the process of cultivating the land and growing their own food. Really, really powerful. So he said also that we can start to see that the tastes of fruits and vegetables are totally different based off of how they're grown, which is another really important foundational element of, creating better health and wellness. This is a quote from Francisco, who is another one of the main kind of workers throughout or for Seeds for a Future. And he gave a lot of really great training and information about, the processes that we were talking about before of how to germinate the seeds. But he said, we're starting to see that in the supermarket, you can actually buy produce and meat that's huge. And I know as Americans, we're very accustomed to this, right? You can buy produce and meat that's huge because they're grown with a ton of chemicals and hormones. And when we grow and harvest our own food, we know now that the produce might be smaller, but they have much more nutritional quality. So again, really speaking to the process of, creating a better, more holistic platform for growing and eating healthy food. This is a quote from Carmenina. She was such a sweet and wonderful member of Seeds. She's a Maya community member from Sololá, which is by Lake Atitlan. She was, yeah, just incredible. Everything that she said and the work that she's doing for Seeds. but she said that one of her favorite parts of working with seeds is growing the seeds, learning how to put them in the soil, and eating healthy food. So she says that I know that the seeds are nutritious and healthy. They're organic without contaminants. And she also loves teaching other people how to grow healthy food like this. And she had many different really beautiful things to say about her work here and how it's changed her life. So this is the final slide I have, and then I'll kick it over to Leilani. But I just wanted to take a moment here to just recognize and acknowledge how beautiful it is to work for an organization focused in population and working towards ultimately population stabilization, because at the community level, and what this ultimately means is such a layered and multifaceted and integrated process. We know that, ultimately the path towards slower population growth in a rights-based context is through increasing access to healthcare and education, especially for women and girls. Because whenever those resources are realized, people end up choosing to go to school for longer and having fewer children overall. But nutrition and access to basic resources like this are such a fundamental aspect of that equation because people, in order to become educated, in order to become healthier, need at the very basics their, access to healthy food. And this is not only a process that helps increase the health and wellness of individuals, but also connects them to the land, to the process of cultivating and growing food, to the process of organic gardening, which is really incredibly important as well for environmental conservation. So really recognizing how integrated this process is and working at the community level to facilitate sustainable development and slower population growth in this very integrated, layered and multifaceted way. So yeah, with that, I will turn it over to Leilani. Thank you very much. And we'll talk in the Q&A.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Hannah, just for handing it over and for laying the foundation for us to kind of grow from. Give me 1 second. I'll share my slides with us and then we can get started. And I want to let everyone know that Hannah has some really great dance skills, and it was great to be able to share that moment with you. If we had more time, maybe we could get into an impromptu dance. But for now, just want to thank everyone for joining us. My name is Leilani Yats, and I am the Executive Director of Seeds for a Future. I've been with the organization for just over 2.5 years. As Hannah shared, we're based in Chocola, Guatemala. And you can see here that this is Hannah and I with our team of field team members. During a really special visit, a 3-day visit that brought her to Chocola, where she got to spend a lot of time that she just summarized really well in getting to know the team and getting to know the program. But before we talk more about the visit and what led us to this day, I kind of want to jump into a little bit of our history. Just to add a little context, you can see this lovely couple up in the right-hand corner. This is Suzanne and Earl de Berg. They came to Chocola back in 2009, and they were there to help with an archaeological dig. And while they were living in Chocola and supporting the dig, they realized that there were a lot of families that were going to the corner stores or the tiendas and just really working with whatever it was that they were able to afford, which was highly processed foods, really no fresh foods. And even till this day, soda is still less expensive than water. And so that became the favored option. And looking at this day after day, they really started to think about other options that they might be able to bring to the families that they were seeing in the community to just iterate and start thinking about, how they could empower them, different tools that they could bring to the table so that the tienda store wasn't just their only option. So they came up with the concept for Seeds for a Future. And through that, they started working with different local events and different organizations so that they could find a local agronomist who could help them really lead the charge. So when you see this handsome fella at the bottom of the screen, this is Armando, as Hannah shared, and he has been with us since the very beginning, just over 15 years. He's worked with the team and really led the team to become the grandfather of the program, and their work together speaks volumes. And we'll get into that a little bit more in just a minute. So to expand on the snapshot that Hannah so kindly outlined for us, as she shared, Guatemala has just about, or more or less, 18 million people within the country. About 50% live in more rural communities, communities that are more often overlooked, as she shared with some of her data. Guatemala ranks within the top 5 most malnourished populations in the world pretty consistently, and very consistently as number 1. Upwards of 90% of the children who live in these rural communities experience stunting. That's on the high end of the average, but stunting not just physically, where they're not receiving the nutrients that they need to be able to grow to their full capacity, but also cognitive function. So that combination really leads to lifelong disease that is very hard for families and for communities to counter. The country also ranks within the top 10 for food insecurity, and upwards of 70% of the population, specifically in rural communities, suffers from a lack of food. So this just helps us to kind of frame and outline the real need for Seeds for a Future and the program that we're about to explain. So the Casa Granja program, or the Seeds for a Future program, is really a year-long mentorship at minimum. So some of our families stay on for 2 years, for 3 years, but really whatever support they feel the need for, we're more than happy to work with them to meet. So during the initial year-long mentorship, the program has 2 core components. So the first is really empowerment through education and bringing education to these families so that we can talk to them about nutrition. What is it about the food that's down at that tienda that we keep talking about that's not so great for their bodies? And what are different alternatives that are healthier, more nutrient dense, that they can start integrating into their diets? When families or participants have a pregnant mother in their home, we also sit with them and we talk about the First 1,000 Days program. And so the First 1,000 Days program not only addresses the needs of the growing fetus and the mother, but also the needs of the mother themselves. And then it also covers the nutritional needs of both the child and the mother for the following 2 years after the birth. We also teach about the WASH program, water, sanitation, and hygiene. Through this program, we're really doing our best to bring as many resources to the families as possible, including access to potable water. We also teach them about sanitation and best practices for hygiene. The goal with the WASH program is, of course, bringing potable water to families, but also to try and reduce as much foodborne illness as possible. We also teach about permaculture principles. So just really helping families understand how to nurture their land, how to assess their land, and just different ways of growing that don't include what Moises told us about, all of the chemicals that can be tasted, that can be smelled, and are more often than not experienced when you're buying from the market. So through these permaculture principles or regenerative principles, families really learn how to connect with their land and grow with their land and nourish it so that it in turn nourishes them. The second component of the program is planting gardens. So what better way to bring nutrition to families other than bringing it directly to their doorstep and working with them. So the first thing that we do is really to identify the resources. We do an assessment of the land. We do this alongside the family, so they're learning as we go. And we're looking for what amount of sunlight can be received or best positioned for growing the garden. We work with them on an individual basis to really design based on the need of the family and given the home that they have and the land that they have. So an example of that might be if someone is renting, which often happens, as Hannah shared, not all families have their own property. We would work with that renter. And an example would be to plant a container garden that's easy for us to pick up and to move if needed. It might also be a hanging garden if they have a smaller rental space. So we really try to work with the families and see the best way that we can maximize their space and just bring their gardens directly to them. And then we implement together, because giving someone a solution and just saying this is the best practice and this is what you should be doing is really easy to do, but actually following through and working alongside them, that's where you see a lot of success. I think they say the sweet spot is in the follow through. So we really try to focus on that as much as possible. So we're there alongside the families. We bring to them those designs, and then collectively we implement those gardens. And then we also learn from seed planting to harvest. So we're teaching from not just the soil, but the planting of the seed all the way through the process until harvest. So you have someone from our team who's working alongside those families to really make sure that the skills are being learned, they're being absorbed, and they're being facilitated. So our approach to the program, like I said, it's really rooted in follow through. It's rooted in connecting with the community. And something that was identified very early on was local leadership is absolutely key. So connecting with local leaders, people who maybe have an aptitude for agronomy, or just a green thumb, and have the inspiration and the motivation to help change their communities. One of the things that we found is by identifying these local leaders and training them not just on our program, but how to become a really solid team member and how to become a community leader and build those leadership skills so that they can connect with communities and build trust and really lean into that follow through. Through the year mentorship, we schedule weekly check-ins. Every family is assigned one specific team member who checks in with them on a weekly basis. And they just go directly to the families. They see how they're doing. They celebrate their wins, and they work with them to overcome any sort of hurdles. And so they have someone that's really rooting for them every step of the way. And if there's anything in between those check-ins that's needed, the families are also welcome to just text via WhatsApp or just give their team member a call, so that they really do have all around support. And something that's really important is just meeting the families where they are. Like we were talking about with families that might be renting their homes. There are also families that are excited about integrating, their home garden at a home that they own. And we might have to develop a little bit more trust with them before they're really willing to give us as much land as they could probably use to create their garden. So more often than not, families might start with maybe like a dining table's worth of land for us. And then by the end of their very first harvest, they really see the opportunity. And so they give us maybe another dining table's worth, and then another. And then, we end up with a larger plot of land, and the family ends up with a lot more food on the table. Again, we personalize the garden designs and the applications. And something that was noted by Hannah as well is just the importance of us growing seedlings in-house. So we have a number of piloneras, seed nurseries that are taken care of by our team members. And one of the goals is just to keep up with the demand. There's such a demand for us to grow these gardens and bring the service to more community members. So it's really important for us to be able to kind of manage our outputs or our inputs in-house. So you can see Susie here with Armando. She's showing us how she is seed harvesting. And those seeds will eventually go to one of our members, which is really exciting. And the most important thing too is that we give everyone a shot. Like we said, there are different skill levels that are introduced, and we like to meet every single member where it is that they are. So you learned a little bit about the program, about Suzanne and Earl, and even Armando. So just to showcase, in a snapshot where we are now. Starting from Chocolat, we were able to grow into 8 different departments or states throughout Guatemala. And we've been able to impact 24 different communities, which is something that we're really proud of, especially because one of our main ways, the main way that we grow is by word of mouth. So this is a family to family, it's community to community, just discussion about the success of home gardens and how others in their community or their neighboring communities are able to partake in and grow their own. So far, we've been able to plant over 5,000 family gardens within those 24 communities, which is really exciting. And on average in Guatemala, there are about 6 people per household. So that puts us just over 32,000 individuals who have been impacted over time. And I do just want to take a second to say that we've been able to grow our team from a smaller team of, just Suzanne, Earl, and Armando over the past 15 years into now having 14 field team members who are servicing these 24 communities. So knowing a little bit about the program, I just wanted to share a couple of insights or testimonials from some of the families and what they have to say about taking part in the program and becoming members. So when we look at families, we think of the parents. They're the head of household and they're responsible for providing for their families. So here, Antonia just shared with us that she had noticed that her family or that her child was having some difficulties, just health difficulties. And with the introduction of the Seeds for a Future program, she noticed a very clear 180-degree turn for her child, who is now living very happy, or I shouldn't say happy, I should say healthy, and just doing well. But at the introduction of the program, she was just experiencing a lot of difficulties and going to a lot of just medical appointments to try and take care of her child. So that's one real focus that we have, is just improving health. And this is a really excellent example of that. Others are children. And I chose this photo specifically because you can see the pride in this little boy's face, that he's so proud of just growing the mushrooms alongside his family. And Maribel and Esvin just talk about how the entire family comes together, and that it's not just the leadership of the parents themselves, but it's also welcoming their children into this so that their children can start from a very young age at gaining this educational material and applying it and really getting their hands in the ground, and that becoming something that they get to carry with them for the rest of their lives. That's something where if they eventually leave their family home and maybe they get married and they have their own land, they can then apply that knowledge and grow their own garden. And it's just a really beautiful thing to be able to not only see what some of the health improvements are that the families have experienced, but also the recognition of the lifelong skill development. And then here with the families, this quote from Sylvia really just shares some of the benefits of growing their own food. When families grow their own food, there are other impacts that come. It's not just about, seeing the improved health or the connection between the family and their gardens, but it's also some of the benefits from saving on going to, the transport and going to the market, or just buying food from the market that is just covered in or grown with, I should say, chemicals. So it's great to hear from Sylvia that she was able to take some of that savings and apply it to something that would serve her and her family. So just leaning into some of the direct benefits, we've obviously, leaned into a couple of testimonials that have shared with us what the benefits are. But of course, accessibility to food is number one. Just having healthier options that are right there at the doorstep of the families, where they can go out and they can pull herbs and create a broth or create a tea. They can pull ingredients and create healthier options for family meals. There's less consumption of processed foods and going down to the tienda because their bellies are full with the fresh produce that they've been able to grow. And so that really does help increase the nutrient dense foods that they're integrating into their day-to-day. The other, like we talked about before, is just lifelong education, not just learning for the day and not just being in a scarcity mindset of wondering where their next meal will be, but learning for the long term, staying in that experiential learning, potentially paying it forward to other community members. And then again, just kids learning and becoming gardeners themselves. There's the improved health that we heard about. So just looking not just at the children and not just at the parents or individuals, but actually the overall household health. There's an INCAP study that we'll share after the presentation. It's the Institute of Nutrition for Central America and Panama. And a few years ago, we worked with them on a 3-year study of the impact of the program being introduced for mothers and for children. And there were some dramatic changes that they were able to observe, or just improvements that they were able to observe within that time. So we think it's really important to be able to share that with everyone. And then obviously the household income, like we were saying before, not having to take transportation, not going to as many medical visits, and not purchasing as much produce where they don't really know where the origins are. And then some of the indirect benefits are confidence and resilience. So this is Suzanne. She's standing with one of our members, and you can just see the lightheartedness and the connection that they have. And there is something to be said about family members, whether it's parents or otherwise, being able to see the improvement of their household health and just sitting in that confidence and knowing that not only did they connect with the earth, and not only did they grow all of these ingredients, but that they were able to integrate them in a way that their family found approachable, and that the long-term outcome was really for them to become healthier and to be able to live better together. So another one of the benefits is really just paying it forward. Like we said, word of mouth is the primary way that we are able to grow. It's how we've been able to grow into the 24 communities that we have. And so being able to, for example, be I don't know, Clelia, for example, who has her house on one side of the street, and she implements the program, and she has a big thriving garden. And, you know, her sister across the way, Sandra, sees that, well, Clelia's got a garden and she's able to produce her own food. Her family's enjoying it. She's seeing the benefits from it. And now Sandra wants to have a garden. And so you've got these two sisters who are across the way from each other. Well, maybe their cousin down the street is really interested in now growing their own garden. So there's a bit of experiential learning. There's a bit of observation, and really just raising the hand to say, I see what you're doing and I'd like to be a part of this program. And again, that's when we meet everyone where it is that they are. There's also economic opportunity. So this is Don Julio. He is one of our senior field team members, and he's holding a little bit from the garden. But when we talk about economic opportunities, we're really talking about micro business opportunities. So one of the easiest things that families can grow are mushrooms. So one of the things that you'll find throughout all of Guatemala right now is a lot of mushroom production. It's as easy as just cutting corn cobs, having the mycelium, building it into a bag in a specific way, cutting holes, and then just tucking it away for a couple of weeks until the mushrooms bloom. And being able to sell that at market allows these families to take little resources and create economic opportunities for themselves. There's also the opportunity of those families who have invested in those larger plots of land and those larger gardens are also able to take their harvest. And if there's excess, of course, they're going to give some to their family. They're going to give some to their community or immediate community. But there's also opportunity for them to put a table right outside of their home and just have all of their harvest, or a portion of their harvest, I should say, on display so that they can sell to their community. So now the community is receiving this nutrient-dense food, and the family is receiving a little bit more money that they're able to incorporate into overall household expenses. And then, of course, it all leads to community working together, which in turn eventually leads to community empowerment as a whole. So this is a photo from one of our recent, community events, where we have these field days. We just post within a certain town that we're focusing on the opportunity for them to come together for a half-day event. They get to see what we have here, which is a demonstration garden. And at the end of the event, the families have a small meal that they're able to enjoy. So it's a means for us to be able to welcome community together and season by season be able to learn what the changes are to the garden, what some of the ingredients are that are changing too, and then of course different ways that they can adapt to the weather as the seasons change, and so much more. I think at this event we had somewhere upwards of 100 people who attended, which was really special. And then, oh, I'm so sorry, we're missing a photo here. But I do want to just talk about partnerships. Partnerships for program extension is something that's really important. It's one of the best ways for us to be able to expand the program into new communities. So here we have 3 different examples. The first is in Santa Cruz del Quiché. Within this circle, please imagine our wonderful field team member, Jenny. In the back, there's a photo of Jenny growing part of her demonstration garden, just bringing kids in so that they can learn and they can be a part of the process, and then they feel more welcome to be able to come back to that demonstration garden and hopefully pull a few other family members to take part in it all. In the middle, we have, again, smiling Carmelina. And Carmelina is such a shining example of the extension program. Early in the presentation, I spoke about Armenia, and Armenia is such a wonderful community member, and she supports 3 different communities. And when her cousin Carmelina came to visit, she saw what it was that Armenia was doing, and she was just mesmerized by it and thought, in Santa Maria Visitacion, where Carmelina is from, she has an entire community of agriculturalists or people who are growing different produce for sale. So they have that base understanding of agriculture. And she just thought, if we were able to introduce this program in this new community, that it would be natural for these families to be able to adapt and grow their own organic gardens in their home. And she ended up being really right, because when she went back to Santa Maria Visitacion, within the first month of her being there, she had 30 families that signed up. And within the second month, she had 65. And by this time, even last week, she had over 150 families that she's now working with that have their own family gardens. So we love to talk about Carmelina and all of her great work. In a newer opportunity, you can see Francisco here. Francisco is now working in Santa Barbara, Suchitepeques. It's maybe 45 minutes to an hour away from our base in Chocolat. And Francisco has connected really well with the M Story. The M Story is an organization that works with 150 families, most of which have women who are their head of household due to migration and other reasons. And so Francisco has just started working with this family to introduce the program, and they have 15 families total, and we have so many more that we're looking forward to working with as we continue to grow within that community. And then talking about partnerships, aside from just growing our program, there are partnerships to work with our existing members and really enhance the services that are offered to them. One of which is Water for Life. Water for Life has, as you can see, these 5-gallon jugs that are connected to filters. The reason that they're jugs is because not everyone has running water in their home. So some of the family members actually have to go to the closest water source and then bring the water back home. And they use the water filter system so that they can have potable water that's really easy to access because it's within their home, but it also helps them to eliminate the use of wood for wood stoves. So that's an added expense in paying for the wood. That's now eliminated. Those stoves often have poor exhaust systems, or they can have poor exhaust systems. So it also cuts down on the pollution that's experienced within the home. So as of the middle of June, we just distributed our first 100 water filters to community members. And we're just really looking forward to being able to distribute the next round that's going to be coming this fall. In the middle is Wings, or here in Guatemala or in Spanish, we say Alas. And Wings is a really wonderful organization. I know that Hannah, you're hosting another event and talking with them about the experience that you had with your visit there. We were able to work with Wings so that they could bring their portable pop-up clinics. Their focus is really on women's health and just empowering them through knowledge and through services. So we've so far been able to host 2 pop-up clinics with Wings, one in Chocolat, which is our headquarters, of course, and then one in a neighboring town called Santo Tomas La Union. And we're just really looking forward to having these cervical screenings available to women. I think at first it's probably a little intimidating because it's a new service, but over time, again, we're just leaning into word of mouth and hoping that we're able to not only grow into new communities with Wings, but also be able to provide this service to more and more of our existing community members. And then Maya Health Alliance, which is another population connection partner. And Maya Health Alliance really looks at the entire family and offers services. They do have clinics throughout the entire country, but they also go door to door and they bring those services to families. So we're working with them right now, or I should say our field team and their local team are working together so that we can start a pilot in Chocolat to go door to door and meet the families again where they are. So that's a little about our organization, a little bit about the program itself, who it is that we work with, who it is that we're reaching, and so just talking about some of our strategic goals for 2025. Number one was really expanding our team. We were seeing this demand from different communities, and we knew that in order to really service them well, we had to expand our team, and we had to do it quickly so that we could teach them everything they needed to know to really show up and do their best. With that, our goal has also been to empower at least 6 new communities within the region. And as of today, we've expanded into at least 4. We still have 6 more months to achieve our goal, and we're very confident with that. And again, multiplying our impact through partnerships, which we just demonstrated. And some of our strategic goals for 2026, we're really excited about leaning into, but I do just want to share that taking this model that has shown over the past 15 years to be really successful and really community building and impactful, we're currently working on an online education program that we'll be launching in the beginning of the year of 2026. So with this, the Food Security Academy will be sharing our model, everything from what you need to teach your team and how to develop a really thriving team to the nutrition education and different programs that we talked about in this presentation. And that way, all of the team members are set up so that they can go into these new communities. They'll learn how to connect with the communities and really gain trust and be able to work with the families from a place of connection as community members. It'll be available in 2 different languages. We're starting with English and Spanish, and of course, there's opportunity for us to grow. And then some of our goals are just partnering with different organizations that either are working with families to provide food security or who are looking to counter malnutrition. So those are just some of our top goals. There are so many more to come, and I look forward to potentially other opportunities for us to talk about, Seeds for a Future and the partnership that we share with PopCon. So with that, I just wanted to thank everyone and say, if you'd like to join us and learn more about our journey and join it, please visit our website. Again, my name is Leilani Yats. I'm the executive director. If you'd like to stay in contact or just reach out with any other questions, the email is here and you'll receive that as well. But just in closing, this is very fitting of a picture because it's Hannah and I and Vivian, who's also on our team with the last family that we were able to visit in Chocolat. So thank you again. And Hannah, I'll hand it back to you.
Thanks so much, Leilani. That was a great presentation. I learned a lot. And yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. So if anybody has any questions they'd like answered live, please feel free to voice them in the chat. We've got about 5 minutes left, so I won't get to too many questions, but yeah, we'll do the best we can. I'll just start off with asking a pre-submitted question. We've got a few here. And one of them is just asking about how you ensure that as a community-led organization, you remain community-led and culturally grounded. I know you work in a lot of different communities throughout Guatemala, and there's different cultural needs. There's different foods that perhaps are native and desired and available. So how do you remain cultural competency or retain it in your work?
Yeah, that's a really excellent question. Like we talked about, local presence and having local leadership is really core. So one of the things that we do is we make sure that as we're branching out into these new communities, that there is a local leader. There's so much context and there's so much nuance to each community. They could be side by side and right there butted up against each other, but operate completely differently and connect very differently. So local leadership is number one. Everyone who's on our team that serves their community is from that community. With Armina, for example, she supports Pasacap, but she also supports two neighboring communities where she has family as well. So it's absolutely core to us and to our mission to make sure that that local leadership is in place and that they know how to connect with the families. So I hope that helps kind of pull everything together in a nutshell. But it's exactly what you were saying. There is so much that needs to be preserved in these rural communities, and so much that can be lost. So being able to work, community member to community member, like I said, we prioritize that pretty highly.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I could definitely see that and experience that entirely community led and run, which makes such a huge difference, especially in terms of buy-in and trust and getting that community cohesion is really important. Does Seeds have a program that's focused specifically on women and girls? I think you may have answered this indirectly, but there's a couple of questions. Girls' education and women and girls specifically. So I wanted to see if you have anything to say around that, or if you have any initiatives that you're planning for the future involving that.
Yeah, that's another great question. I would say specific to women's empowerment or for girls in education, not directly, not at this time. A really interesting, I would say, observation is that for a lot of these families, there are two things. We touched on it with the M story, where the head of household, who would usually be male, more often than not, you can experience or you will hear that the men are migrating up to the US or seeking refuge in the US. And with that, they leave these women in these head of household positions that they're not used to. And so part of why we're working with the M story is that they give the tools that the women need to be able to lean into that role as best as possible. But the other aspect, beyond women being the head of household, is that these are also very traditional communities with traditional dynamics. So during the day, the men will go out and they'll have, maybe it's a labor job, or maybe they're working in an office or something along those lines. And the women naturally are the ones that are staying home, and they're taking care of the children. They're taking care of the home itself. So they also end up being the ones who are leading in the garden. They're not just the ones who are nurturing the garden and harvesting and then taking those ingredients and integrating them into the meals that the family enjoys. But when we get to a place where they're harvesting more than they can consume, the women are also the ones that are setting up that table that we talked about, and they're the ones that are selling to the community. So there is a bit of empowerment within that regard. And then a last bit that we can say is that we do want to make sure that pregnant women are able to receive the nutrition that they need during their pregnancies. And so we do focus on the first 1,000 days program for families, or for pregnant women. And I think it's a really solid foundation for them to step into that childhood and beyond.
Absolutely. That's a beautiful response and answer. Thank you so much. And we're right at the hour, so we'll go ahead and close things down. Thank you, everyone, for joining and for the lively participation in the chat. Thank you so much, Leilani, for that incredible presentation and for teaching us a little bit more about Seeds for a Future. We do have a few questions that were pre-submitted that weren't answered that we will get to via email. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, thanks very much. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you again.